This is kind of a momentous moment. This little patch here is something that Bill and I put on the Alaskan Gypsy when we were on the dry dock in Ketchikan. It was to make absolute 100% sure that we didn't leak any fuel out of the boat or let any water into the boat on the journey up here to Ketchikan, and while the boat sat in the shipyard or sat in the harbor in Ketchikan for a few weeks until we could come back and move it here to Wrangell and put her on the hard where there was no concern of sinking. So we pumped all the fuel out of this tank, but we also put this patch on here, which is threaded into the hull. It's an aluminum bar with a bunch of 5200 around it, and actually underneath of it there's a rubber gasket. It's a pretty good patch for a temporary situation, and it looks like it really worked good. It's not something I would recommend as a adequate fix to a hole in your hull, but to get us over here where we could fix it proper, it did well. So I'm just taking these threaded bolts out, and then I'm going to pry this patch off, and we can start fixing it proper. Okay, here we go. The patch coming off. How hard is it to get a patch off? Ooh. That's, oh man, look at that. Broke my little broken putty knife. Let's try our next soldier, our miniature pry bar. Wow. Well, I gotta say, it appears as though this temporary patch is pretty well adhered on there. Huh. Looks like I'm going to have to get some more appropriate tools on the job. About to remove the old patch. I got some more tools in my hand now. I got a hammer and a chisel. More appropriate, I think, for what is required. Get this framed up. Whoa. There we go. Okay, let's see if we can get it off. Wow. That is impressive. Oh, there. Kind of broke the seal there a little bit on it. This is basically Splash Zone and 5200. I think that it's under this metal is rubber gasket, or 5200, a rubber gasket? I can't remember. I don't remember what's under there, but I saw the seal broke there. There it goes, it's prying off. It's an incredible bond considering the circumstance that this was put on. Okay, so what we're doing now is ripping off. That was, wow. That was aluminum with 5200 to a piece of rubber gasket material. That was how strong that bond was. And there was, so the 5200 ripped the splash zone off of the steel, and it ripped some rubber apart. The bond was so good between the aluminum and the rubber that it delaminated the rubber. So the 5200 bond to the rubber between aluminum was actually stronger than the rubber was itself. That's quite something. It was also, the splash zone to the rubber was stronger than the splash zone to the steel. It delaminated there. That steel was probably a little bit of diesel soaked. That's my tap hole there. Interesting. Wasn't actually all the way through looks like. But so anyhow, the hole is somewhere in here still. But we've got that out of there. Now we have the rubber gasket material, which is also not pulling off the steel, it's delaminating before the splash zone bond fails. That's amazing. Let's see, you can see what we've got going on here. That's the threaded hole for that bolt that was holding the aluminum on there, which was just kind of spreading out the load and keeping pressure on this whole thing. There's the other one that was through the 5200. That's the rubber gasket. There's the original electrolysis damaged steel, bright and shiny from the electrolysis, and it has not been getting any moisture on it, so it hasn't bloomed a little rust coating like these ones were all shiny before too. But just shiny steel. So I'm going to keep demoing here. Camera set up. Let's see. Let's see how this tool works. So what I'm trying to rip off there now is 5200 on the edge. What's that white stuff? That's pulling off paint. So that was also a very good bond. And we got a little bit of rubber, little splash zone and paint coming off. The splash zone to the bottom paint was also very strong. Wow. Basically ripping this rubber gasket material into shreds because it's so adhered to the splash zone that it won't break free. Breaking up and destroying that splash zone. Let's see if we can bust it out of here. Ship it out. Well, I gotta say, I'm impressed. Here's the splash zone that I put there just to be a drip edge. That's popping off, but not easily. That was put on in soaking wet, wet and diesel soaked little area. Stuck that on there so that any diesel weeping out would drip down into my catchment container. Yeah, basically look at that stuff, it's just so strong and adhered, it doesn't want to pop off. It's impressive. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I might grind this thing out. It's obviously going to take a lot of work with the chip and hammer, and it's overhead, pretty awkward. But I guess for a real life, I got my headphones on, but I didn't have my ears covered. Real life test of an emergency repair, splash zone in 5200, rubber gasket, and an aluminum bar over it for backing support and holding it in. I'd say results are excellent. So for an emergency in the field repair on a diesel tank leak, in one tide, all done while the tide was coming back in. Well, actually, no, the aluminum bar and 5200 were done on the next tide cycle, but yeah, great results. I'm impressed. Hope to never have to do it again. And then get to work on this thing. Let's take a look at that. I started with the wire wheel. 3-inch knotted wire. And then I switched to this Welder Elite strip disc. Removing Splash Zone. And little 5200. There's where the issue was. That's still Splash Zone inside there. And you can see it's really in there. That strip disc takes off the paint and any of the high spots really nicely. Doesn't really take away any base metal. It's left the Splash Zone repair in there. And let's see if we can bust that thing out. I'd just like to take this moment to acknowledge how incredibly strong and adhered that Splash Zone is. This material has a pretty infamous reputation in Alaska. I've seen a lot of boats that look like they might be held together with it, and I can see why. I've used it some, but honestly this is my first real world use and then follow-up testing experience with it in an application like this. And so just to recap real brief, this Splash Zone was put over an active diesel, I'll call it a weep. It wasn't gushing fuel, it was spraying out the tiniest bit. The hole was so small that I couldn't even get a toothpick in there to plug it, but it had 350 gallons of fuel behind it. So it was a very fine spray or a weep, kind of depending on whether you touched the paint that was barely still there or not. So that was the circumstance. And actually there wasn't any paint because that had blown off, but it was just a real small leak. So I put the Splash Zone over what was essentially diesel soaked galvanized steel. So it was bright shiny steel that was definitely coated in diesel fuel and actively leaking. And then I put that rubber gasket over it, just a square of rubber, to try and hold the Splash Zone in. And so the Splash Zone had to set up with a diesel film between it and the steel that was not prepped, no acetone, no nothing. And the diesel continued to weep out around the Splash Zone and the rubber gasket for a while. We weren't able to completely stop it because we couldn't hold even pressure on it. I needed some big magnets or something for a quick fix, and I have since got some magnets. So I think that even just like some plastic and a big magnet, bam, could have stopped that leak immediately. Welding wasn't an option at the time for various reasons. So anyhow, that's the environment that this Splash Zone was applied in. And here we are months later, removing it in the shipyard. And it's very tough to get out. It's not brittle. It's not cracking out with the hammer. It doesn't grind out easy. It's bonded very well to the metal. I beat on it with the hammer, a chipping hammer, a pointed hammer, and no sign of failure weakness. It gives me no indication of weathering over time there. Hasn't been very long, but incredible bond and incredible adhesion, I'd say. So there you go, little Splash Zone mini review. Really incredible. It's making my job hard to remove it, to be honest. But I'm happy to be doing it because I'm learning as I go, that's for sure. So just again, a quick look there. There's an old seam on the boat there where the plates meet. 2 plates of steel, 5/16 steel. Galvanic corrosion or electrolysis had dissolved the weld there, and it got so deep that it easily made a pinhole. And there's a Splash Zone putty applied on the tidal grid over diesel-soaked steel. And here we are trying to get it out, finding it very well adhered, very resilient, incredible patch. So there's some other pieces I put in, other little thin spots that concerned me at that time that I didn't want to turn into more headaches or leaks. So I got some work to do getting rid of all those, but happy that kept the boat safe, kept us out of trouble until this is the right place and the right time to address the underlying issue. So. Oh, one more thing. Yes, you may have just seen me grinding Splash Zone without a respirator on. It's true. I held my breath the whole time. No joke. Actually, I figure it's like free dive training. When I'm doing something like that, I'm outside. There's actually a pretty decent amount of airflow, and I just hold my breath. I ground in sand for, I don't know, might have been 30 seconds or something. I can hold my breath that long, and then by the time I stop, the natural breeze has carried all those particles away enough to where I feel fine breathing again. So yeah, maybe not the most kosher, OSHA approved technique, but it works for me. And until I die, I guess proof's in the pudding. I don't know. I got a stuffy nose now, but it's not related. Thanks for watching out for my safety.